Hi everyone, welcome back to Tam. Today we're making scones. Check those out. I know you're thinking they're not very pretty. Scones aren't pretty, but they taste incredible. Scones start out life in Scotland around the 1500s, and they start out as this big griddle cake, which will explain why in America scones are triangle shaped, because they're big. They're about the size of a plate originally, and they are cooked on a griddle, and then they're cut into wedges, which is what American scones look like. But after a while in England, the Scottish scone gets punched out to be much, much smaller, like these guys, and they're baked in the oven. With the introduction of baking soda and artificial leavening agents, it becomes much more common to have scones. And one of the first things introduced to the British afternoon tea is a scone. Let me just show you the perfect scone. See, it's not pretty, it's not even. This is because of all of the cream of tartar and baking soda that's gone in there. But because of its height, it's naturally gonna wanna open up. And check that out. That is what a perfect scone looks like. This is buttery goodness. It is so delicious. A proper Brit would now slather this in butter, add cream and jam. I skip the butter. I just go straight for the cream and jam. But, you know, everyone to themselves. These are incredible. So let's get into it. Follow along as we make our own incredibly delicious scones. And as soon as I tuck into one of these, what would afternoon tea be without scones? And as we're preparing for our Shabbat afternoon tea, scones have to be part of it. And tea as like pseudo meal is introduced to Britain around the mid-19th century, when Anna, the 7th Duchess of Bedford, is peckish in the afternoon. She feels a little bit low at around 4 o'clock. She calls for tea, which was a drink that had been introduced when England controlled India, and she asks for some sweet cakes to go with it, and one of the cakes that come are scones. So we're gonna make these right now. Let's get started. This is an awesome recipe adapted from Nigella Lawson's How to Be a Domestic Goddess. I love that book. We're gonna start with 500 grams of flour into my sieve. Here we go. There's a sieve set over a bowl, and we're just going to sieve it in, and we're gonna add all the rest of our ingredients as well. There aren't very many. Scones, like a lot of other British treats, don't actually have lots of different ingredients. There are just a few, and they come together brilliantly. So into my sieve, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, and Nigella Lawson's magic ingredient, which is cream of tartar. The cream of tartar helps to keep the scones lighter. You could see in a minute why they could be very dense, and they just like melt in the mouth. It's incredible. So in goes 4 teaspoons of cream of tartar. In it goes, and those are our dry ingredients ready. Let's give them a little bit of a mix with a fork. As I said, there's nothing much going on here. Really, that was flour, baking soda, cream of tartar, and salt. And in goes butter. I know it looks like grated cheese, but it isn't. It is grated butter, because this is one of those cakes or bakes that want as little handling as possible. So by grating the butter, we're ensuring that it just goes in super, super fast, and just rub it into the flour until it's all in. Again, we're going for that pea-sized lumps of flour and butter together until all the flour feels a little bit moist, and the butter is pretty much, but not completely, mushed into the flour. This shouldn't take you very long. Putting together scones shouldn't take very long, because we are nearly done. Oh my goodness, scones and tea. When I was first married to my husband, first my parents moved to England first. That's how I met my British husband. Outside shul on a Friday night. I tell people, go to shul, you never know who you're gonna meet. So my future mother-in-law took me out for tea, and these like lumps of dough were sitting there. And she's like, taste one, promise you, you'll love it. And I tasted it, and oh my God. And this cake, which is already hugely buttery, if you're properly British, you're gonna slather some more butter on it. Top it with cream and then jam. It's insane. All right, so my flour and butter mixture is done. It didn't take very much work at all. Get some of the flour off my hands. We don't want any of it being not in the scone. And here I have whole milk. If you're already going full butter, go whole milk. There's just no point otherwise. Going into my flour mixture, and just with my fork, very briefly, I'm gonna mix it together just until it starts to come together and all the milk is absorbed in the flour. As I said, a scone does not take much work. Here we go. It's nearly there. We're gonna dump it out onto my surface and knead it for a few seconds. All right, so the dough just came together. I'll show you, there it is. And I'm going to knead it just until everything is kind of set and ready to go. And every one of these movements should be as brief as possible. And don't worry too much if it doesn't look perfect. And there is my dough. I'm gonna roll it out just a bit, but not too much. I want really like high and fluffy scones out of this. So there we go, done. How awesome is that? It didn't take much work, did it? Here is my round cookie cutter. You could use a fluted edge one. You can use, you can add currants to your dough, which is very traditional. So there is my scone. It's a bit of a hockey puck looking, and it's going straight on my baking tray, ready to go into the oven. And I do want them a little close together. They're gonna rise a lot and they're gonna support each other during the time that they rise. Oh my goodness. If you'd like, you could brush the top with a little bit of egg wash, which is gonna give it a bit of a glaze. You could leave it bare. You know, the world is your scone. It's very exciting. I really do love these. So here's the Shabbat trick. Let's say scones, firstly, you have to know, are best served fresh. But to get around the whole issue of cooking on Shabbat and making them ahead, what we do around here is, as soon as they come out of the oven, let them cool as much as we can for about half an hour, and then freeze them straight away. On Shabbat afternoon, thaw for another hour, and then, oh, by the way, here, all the scraps, you re-roll them, and you're gonna get a few more scones out of the re-rolled dough. And this time, I'm just flattening it with my hand. I don't wanna put too much work into the scone. And then you stick it on your hot plate, and then you will mimic the feel of a fresh scone. Yes, a fresh scone straight from the oven is a thing of beauty, but you can make it ahead of time. You could definitely reheat them on a hot plate. They're completely dry. Oh my goodness, scones on the way. Our scones are ready to go in the oven. They're punched out, they're brushed with egg wash. They're going into a super hot oven, 220 degrees Celsius, like 450 Fahrenheit, for about 20 minutes until they're like puffed up and golden. They're going to be delicious. Our tea tray is getting full of more and more delicious tea time treats. All right, join us again tomorrow when our next tea layer comes up. Oh my goodness, so exciting. See y'all soon.